Maybe I don't make
join each other on point. Take out the website. You can say the rest of
Yeah. Here? Yeah, sorry. No problem. I'm done. Yeah.
Lots of fun of right now. Are there sufficient seats? Do we need to get more? Good. Hi, welcome everyone here at our second edition of the DevHearts Desk meetup. Very nice for all of you to be here. We never know how many people show up and meet up, but this is a really nice crowd, so happy to have you here. This whole thing, this DevHearts Desk, started out as something internally here. You're here at Hype 1, where the designers over here, and we share a floor with developers from the Voorhoede. We're on the other side of the building, and we're two separate companies, one designers, one developers, and so at some point it's nice if you're specialized in a specific thing, but you end up being silos and being kind of looking inward rather than meeting each other somewhere. We still have lunch here together normally, so that's a good thing, but we figured it would be nice to introduce some extra events in which we try to have a better relationship between designers and developers. So that's what we started out doing here internally. I think about 2 years ago, it started out giving small talks to each other, introducing new concepts, and that transformed in sometimes doing little workshops in which we would team up between designers and developers and just create fun new stuff. Those were small workshops at the end of the day. By now, we finally also turned that into a full day workshop, a masterclass, which we're also giving for anyone externally. And it's mostly aimed for designers this time, in which we just introduce new web technologies, explain better about how the browser and the web works, how the permissions on the web work, and how you can create better designs with that by knowing that, with fun exercises throughout the day. So maybe that's something you want to check out. You can find it through our website on voorhoede.nl, and with DevHearts Desk, with an S, DevHearts Desk, you get a 20% discount. But you're not here for that today. You're here for the meetup. So this is the schedule that we have for you tonight. We have 3 talks. We have some food in between. We just confirmed the order, so they're bringing it in during the first talk so that you have food halfway. We always do a head count because otherwise we're stuffed with food for the rest of the week, depending on how many people show up. So, new format. We have 3 talks. So the first one is from Nadia, and she'll be telling about how you can learn developers and designers to work together. I think it's not just how to not kill each other, it's actually how to build killer features and not kill each other. That didn't fit. So that's the first one. Then after the break, we'll have Hoeva, talking about Sketch libraries. And because we came one speaker short, I'll also be finishing tonight. Sorry about that. And I'll also give a talk about single-page apps and progressive web apps. And after that, you can stick around as long as you want for drinks until they run out. So let's get started with Nadia. I'll give you everything in the meantime. Yeah. So Nadia is leading a team of UX specialists at Xavia. I think everyone here knows Xavia Labs, sorry. And I think you're actually her practice audience. So she's gearing up for a larger event. And since she was focusing on the overlap between designers and developers, she figured that we were a nice testing ground for her talk. So.
Okay.
It's not in your hair, but.
It's not designed for women with long hair.
All right. Looks good. That's the most important thing. Right? Good. Small ball.
Oh, sorry. Give it up for Nadia.
All right. All right. So hi everybody. I'm super happy to be here today. For me, actually, this is my first experience talking so seriously or so well with such a big of a crowd. This is a big crowd for me, so I'm super excited. Thanks so much for coming. And actually, I was thinking about how to start this talk in a really interesting way. But before we're gonna go into the slides, I wanted to get to know a little bit my audience today to see if are you fitting the target for this slides and all. So, who of you are actually working in the agile teams? Raise your hand. Who are writing the code or doing something with the code, like developers, the architects? Any designers in the room? Okay. Okay, awesome. All right. So I would like to start with a little, well, exercise or a story. Let me just try to close this one. So let's try to imagine that your agile team, with who you work on a daily basis, is actually your team of builders or constructors for building a house, right? So instead of the software that we develop on a daily basis, we're building a house, let's say. Everybody has a PO, but let's imagine for a second that that's a house owner who knows what kind of a house he wants and who will probably sell his house later to some client who will pay a lot of money. So where our work usually starts? So we have the scope of work, we have requirements, so we perfectly know that we want to have a 2-floor house, right? It will have a nice facade here, like a nice entrance, a lot of flowers. 3 windows because maybe I like daylight. It will have a roof terrace, whatever. So this is our requirements, and yeah, we perfectly know where we are going. So we're starting the work. Everything goes fine. All the builders doing their work. Architects design their stuff. There is a lead architect, maybe who's leading the project. So everything goes fine. But there are sometimes, right, we have some impediments coming, some problems. In our case, let's say this is a bad weather, so there is a storm coming out, and your builder team cannot really work. So we have to like stop for a second for a day or two, and come back a bit later. Usually we solve this kind of like impediments in our teams. Like, okay, we have a meeting, we quickly find a decision, we solve it, go. So here we are coming to the end of our sprint or to the end of our project. This is the day where we would always, let's say, invite product owner for a demo, right? We would show what we've done. So this is how our burn down chart looks like. Everything seemed to be pretty fine. So we started here, we finished, so everything should be delivered. But there is something wrong, right? This is not really where we started. So the house is missing a couple of things, right? And let's say because of the not enough time during the development sprint or something, we decided that we're gonna make the front door a bit less fancier, that we maybe gonna make it narrower, that we're gonna just remove the window because we anyway have 2, another one, right? Like 2 windows, like who cares? And we're gonna have a cheaper paint for the roof, so it's gonna look like this. So this is our result. Like it looks okay, right? The house, you can live in there, like you can sleep, eat, everything's fine. But this is not what we wanted. This is not where we aimed for. And because those impediments came, because we couldn't maybe regroup properly, and so something went wrong. Looks familiar to anybody, the situation? Yeah? Good. Well, I think we should not be feeling bad about it, or so things happen. So today I want to talk about how we can maybe avoid this kind of situation. And I think based on my experience, one of the ways to avoid these kind of things is, being very communicative. And I really, this is what I learned working for 5 years in the development myself, in the design, when teams are communicating properly, I think we can avoid many of these things. So a little bit about myself, who I am to talk about this today. So my name is Nadia Udalova, and I'm working as a UX team lead at Xebia Labs. So not Xebia, but Xebia Labs. We are working in the same building, but we are a little bit two different companies. So what my company does, and why I'm talking about like developers and designers, my company is a provider of a continuous delivery software. So we have 3 products more focused on the continuous delivery or DevOps. I think to many of you, especially to developers, it should say a lot. And as you know, if we are targeting this kind of products, my target audience, my target user is pretty technical, person, let's say, a guy or girl, doesn't matter. And so I work at a pretty development-driven company, and this is what kind of like eager me to talk about these things today. Since last year, I'm leading the UX team, so it's a new journey for me. I'm really excited. I have a cool team. We are expanding, we are growing, learning together. And at the same time, I'm also leading, and I co-founded the Ladies at UX Amsterdam community. Maybe that some of you know here. Anybody was at our meetups? A couple of you. Oh, awesome. Yeah. So we run meetups also at a monthly basis, so it's pretty similar to what guys are doing here today. And I'm also a big fan of Agile, and this is why I went last year and got the Design Sprint certification. So I placed there the book. So this kind of a Design Sprint by Google Ventures, because there are all different types of them, and I'm a big fan of those things. So if anybody have any experiences, I also would like to discuss that, because this is pretty cool. All right. So in 2014, when I joined Xebia Labs, when I entered the door of the company, this is approximately the picture that I've seen. So I was the first designer to be hired in-house. Before me were agency people who were coming, designing things and just leaving, running out of the door. I've seen a lot of monitors, right? Maybe people sitting with 2 monitors, with 3 monitors, and a lot of coding applications open, a lot of guys, and the really thing that came to my face, let's say directly when I started interacting with people, I understood that because the company was so much development driven, there was so much techies inside, right, who were designing the product. They actually were developing our products, what they thought IT for IT, right? So basically, they've been developing the products for developers in some way or another. So our user base is really technical. So they would often think like, we know our target, our target audience. We know what they want. They're similar like us. They're also coding. They like writing scripts. They like working with Jenkins, all of these things. So we know what they want. So when I came into the office, I was given a table somewhere far in the corner, and as I said, I was the first person on the design team, and I had a UX title, right? So I was coming there all eager to do the user research and user tests and user interviews, but what I was actually trusted to do is basically like graphic UI interactions. So it was not that much fun. So I was feeling like that a little bit in the beginning. Right, and so actually, a lot of years, 4 or 5 years passed since that time, and I would like to share my journey a little bit and a couple of things that I've learned, and I think we made a big step from that time to today. I would like to share some tips and tricks that I found really helped me find myself within the development space, and actually bring maybe design to a little bit higher level than it was in 2014 when we started. So my main goal to talk today about how designers and developers can better collaborate together in order to avoid those kind of situations as I started my presentation from. How we can better collaborate, how can we communicate on a, let's say, higher level and actually make it a little bit more natural maybe and maybe fun. to make sure that the software, that the features that we release are somewhat higher quality and having a little bit higher user experience parameters. So two things that I want to talk today. These are the main challenges that I think help me to really find the place for UX in DB Labs. This is the allocation of the UX resources. So which means if you have a UX team within the, let's say, development organization or maybe any organization, where does it actually have to sit in order to, let's say, take this place not to end up in a corner somewhere? So there is no proper cooperation. And the second one is actually some tips that help me to align the UX and development work. I'm not saying we are actually like superheroes there, but I think we are trying new things and we made some progress. So I would like to share those. Let's start from the first one. So the allocation of the UX resources. So if we are gonna look at the most of the organizations today, we're gonna see the two main types of the way how managers or UXers themselves put themselves into the organization. So the first one is should be familiar to many of you actually. This is people call this internal agency model. So which means when your UX team behaves in the organization like an internal, well, not digital, but digital UX squad or UX agency, which means you have your UX team that forms its own group, its own community. They would mostly sit maybe together in the office or with their own table. And around them you have the Scrum teams, the features team, the product team. I don't know, however, I see that it's called differently in different organizations. So they sit, they form their own teams, own communities, let's say. So UX is not actually really involved into the teams themselves. So it's not like there is no UXer that's dedicated and sits with this development team and sits with that development team. There is usually some kind of a design lead or UX lead or UX manager who helps the UX agency, the UX team to gather the work from all of the feature teams, of all of the Scrum teams, and who helps to prioritize the backlog. And usually the communication that happens here is, so the PO would come to the lead and they would, the PO would share the work that needs to be done for his team, and he will kind of drop it on the UX and say, hey, I need this by that time, and then you figure it out with the UX team when it will be. Familiar to anybody? Anybody works like this? So there are a couple of classes, like why this model works. I think one of the biggest pluses is that you actually have your UX team culture set up. So you have your UX team, it's a separate team. They have their own rituals most of the time. So it can be planning, it can be stand-up. Sometimes I see that UX team have just the same way as a development, right? They can have their own even demo, retrospectives, all of the things are there. So, and yeah, it's nice because there is a UX culture within the organization. Another big advantage of this model is that with this allocation of the UX team, that it's not actually sitting near the development, I tend to see that then people are more focused on the kind of future of the feature. So they would maybe more tend to go more out to do the user testing sessions or to gather the requirements maybe from the users with the POs, etc. So they're a little bit more out facing instead of like inwards facing. When you're sitting together with your developer, I can imagine that a lot of collaboration there would be happening. Like, hey, I miss this icon. What was the interaction here again? Or like, you know, all of these kind of things. And another big plus is that because your UX team is together, actually usually these people would kind of like rotate maybe between the teams. Maybe they would be assigned to the particular development team, but they are together, so they know what's happening in each of the teams. So they kind of like can talk about, hey, I just designed this component, the new component for this team, and then if another team needs something similar, they can reuse it. So yeah, this way we can have better consistency. There are a couple of minuses. Because, as I said, PO, like all of these POs will come to the lead and they will drop the work on them. It's really hard. Like, how do you, as a UX lead, how do you prioritize which one product over another, right? One feature over another, one team over another. So you have to deal with that somehow. And another minus why we are actually today as well here is you have much less connection with your development team if you're sitting within your UX. Around here circle. So this is one model. Again, internal agency model that works like a digital model. Digital agency inside of the organization. But there is another one, which is being called hub and spoke, or a cross-functional model, cross-functional team. So this is exactly when we have the development teams, and then there is a designer or UXer or UI designer, as it's called in the organization, is placed within the teams inside. So each development team has its own designer who they ask for specifications, ask for icons and for the assets and everything else. And there is a UX team lead or UX manager, or maybe somebody who represents that role, who kind of like crossing this team. So maybe they have some gatherings sometime, or some meetings or some talks, some discussions. So kind of like this person would have kind of like a boss PO and a boss UX boss. So two people who would be receiving information from. Again, a couple of pluses here with this model. The biggest one probably is that in this way of allocating the UX teams, you can really get a fast response to the changes. So whenever your PO runs to you and says, hey, we are building the totally wrong thing, we really need to change that, then designer is on the team, so they can immediately start working together with development, brainstorming, etc. And the changes are kind of done faster, I think, to what I've seen. Another big plus is that UX is being like directly involved with the dev team, so there is no gap between the knowledge. So everything what dev hears, pretty much designers then also will hear. And then UX, of course, is much more connected to the development focus, so they know where they're going to. They hear the same goals. So it's really just much more connection between the UX and developers. But there are some problems with this type of allocation of UX team, of course. There is much less alignment within the UX, so probably less UX rituals, probably less UX catch-up. You are not really aware what each of every team is doing. So these UXers may not talk too much, maybe we're walking in the kitchen, but they won't have really like retrospective when they would brainstorm, hey, like how do we better build a design system, let's say, or maybe some brainstorming workshop. It can be, but maybe much less than in the previous one. And this way we have much more consistency problems. And when a designer or UX is sitting with the development, what I'm seeing that there is much more focus on the day-to-day things. So it's like you will be really busy on helping and supporting what development is doing at this moment, but somewhat less focus on the future. So somewhat less user testing. You probably don't go so often outside because usually, like, well, you are alone probably in the team. So like, you just like stick with the developers and just help the guys to build the thing. I often when I show this slide, people ask me like, so what's better, A or B, right? So what, and this is generic, right? There can be maybe some variance in between, but like, what's better? What should I do for my company? Which one should I pick? And the answer basically non-existing, and say it depends, right? The famous answer to any question, it depends. And it depends on various things. It depends in the first place, maybe, as far as I can judge, on the ratio of designers and developers. So imagine if in this case you have like 10, 11 development teams and you have only 4 designers, let's say. What do you do then, right? And how do you share those designers? You cannot say, hey, you sit half day with this team and half day with that team. In this case, it probably would make much more sense to do like UX agency, and then when everybody would be kind of like dropping work into your cycle. Another thing is how mature is your organization actually? Because when the UX designer is sitting with the developer together, probably the quality of the work that development is doing at that time is probably somewhat a little bit higher, because there is, well, again, two heads is always better than one, right? There is much more collaboration. Maybe somewhat designers can support developers like with some maybe quick testing on the go, or somewhat better looks and feel and interactions, etc. But when the company is just, let's say, growing, it probably makes much more sense to make this kind of like a UX circle inside, which will help you to go outside and investigate some things, maybe bring information back to the company. So then you share it with the guys, and then they build this. So it really depends how mature your organization is. Another fact is the development team's autonomy. It's probably like, I don't know, in my company, it's really hip term. Everybody wants the development team to be super autonomous, work without the PO, or I don't know if you heard any other companies reaching that as well. So like, if let's say if your development team is really is really attentive to the details, if they can really come to the designers and say, hey, I need this from you, and they won't be shy, they won't be afraid, let's say, it's fine. Then you can let your UX team go and like maybe investigate some next steps. So it really depends with how advanced is your development team. And then, of course, in general, the organization structure and the goal and their goals. If they would like to spend a bit more time in like building the UX team, as like another hip thing right now, and try out things, do A/B testing or some other fancy thing, then it probably makes a little bit more sense again. So, what did we do at the UX? At the Exhibia Labs. We actually found ourselves a little bit in the middle of these two, because I thought like, well, this one won't really work for us perfectly, because this reach with the development and designers and really draws with this kind of model, and this is like too much for us, because we have a pretty big designer and developers difference in integration. So what we've done, we did this. We brought in a Spock designer. So maybe some fans of the Star Wars here, they know this guy. What does the Spock designer mean? So this is a single point of contact designer that we have for each of the feature team in the company. So what we agreed with the Scrum Masters and with the Scrum teams is that, hey guys, so if you have a question about a certain, if you have a question about your product that you are designing your feature, this is your person who you should always go and contact first, because he will bring the news into the team, and you don't need to kind of like come to us and figure out, hey, who is working on reporting, for example, who is working on the dashboard. And then it's kind of like easy to just give developer only one option that you have to talk to him whenever you have a question. So this is how it looks approximately. So we're still a UX agency between the feature teams, but we have this like one link that would link these teams to the UX team. So we have a little bit better collaboration. I will be going into more secrets or more tips. Maybe not going to be too new for you guys, how we are handling the communication also in the second part of the presentation. But also what we are doing, we have another team that doesn't actually work on the core of the product, but it's more like a development agency with us. So when they have a UX feature or some feature that requires really a lot of the UI input, we just send the designer to them and we leave it with them, because they work like, let's say, 2 months only, and then they just hop on to something else. So we would send the designer to them, and we would spend most of the time with them. So he would sit a little bit more maybe with them and kind of like follow their cycles and see what things they need from us. So we're kind of like really experimenting and trying to see, hey, how we can maybe find the middle ground between the A and the B, so it really suits our organization. It works quite good for us, I think, till now. but it's always kind of nice to play. So it all comes down to like kind of sharing the UX resources within the organization. Because anyway, not every feature team will always be requiring the same amount of the UI or UX inputs. So it's all about like balancing, at least for us, this is how we figured it out. We always would rotate the designers between the developers and see, hey, that team needs the most work, so we would dedicate 2 designers to that team and the rest will catch up on the other one. We found this works best for us. All right. So here I'm coming to my second part of the reasons that hold us from setting up this really good collaboration between development and designers. This is something that, yeah, I see can be quite challenging. So how to actually align this like, UX and development work in the organization? Again, we are doing quite some experiments, so this is just my experience sharing with you. Don't take this as a best practice. This is how I see the user experience team, right, in Zebra Labs. We are kind of like an icebreaker. That what do icebreakers do? They go on the ice, and below them they're probably like a full tail of the other ships, smaller ones, usually more like fragile. And it finds the safest, the best way to navigate through that sea, right, which is covered with the ice. This is, I feel like, most of the time what UX team is doing within the organization. So when we are agreeing to build a certain feature or extend a certain product, it's wise to send out your maybe UX team first, and like maybe they can build a real prototype, or some kind of a prototype that we test it, but then we won't waste this time, right, in the development side. So this is how this usually looks like, and so kind of like showing maybe 3 different versions of the product, and this is our release dates, right, when we would go live. So what's happening at Zebra Labs at least, and I kind of found this as a best practice, that this is how UX work, right? Like maybe requirement gathering together with the PO and development. Then we would build some wireframes. We would estimate the technical possibilities. We would also test it with the users. This is really what we want to build. And then like well, slowly somewhere in the middle, part by part, there is a development for deploying. Well, actually, they probably could do already some backend preparations here. But so kind of like we are switching slowly, but there is like a big part of collaboration, of course. And so somewhere here, when our UI work or UX work is more or less done for the first feature, first version of the thing, we're kind of starting to roll our work already on the next one, giving some time for development to finish up here and then to catch us later there. So it's not like we've worked totally separate. We still collaborate a lot, and there is like a crossing point between the work that we need to do, but mostly like we start out first and then development joins, and then they kind of finish it off. Of course, with some UX involvement as well. Many people I've heard calling this waterfall. I do not agree really with that. I think this is still pretty agile, because I think we are making a big mistake. When we are directly here starting to like develop, I don't know, build up feature really the code involving a lot of development time. Again, you guys are not cheap. I really see a lot of value just of building maybe prototype first in Vision, in Sketch, in Zapping, in Framer, wherever you prefer, and then really going on and building it in actual code. Of course, as I said, I'm a big fan of new UX. I think there is a lot of principles for which are helping us to set up this collaboration with the development team properly. So the first like golden rule is that, as I said, UX is an icebreaker, but it helps you to move from these most uncertain assumptions that you're just, okay, we think it's that way, but we are not sure. By doing testing, user interviews, testing, A/B testing, you name it, we can move from that uncertainty to a much higher level of clarity. And bringing with us on that train the developers, the POs even sometimes, and everybody else who is interested to see how the decision is being done. And why we are going from A, and why do we sometimes finish up at, I don't know, G, for example. Another thing is I often see long debates happening in the meeting rooms. Whenever we are deciding to build a certain feature, there is like whole meeting. Usually the room filled with 6 people. The two loudest are arguing like crazy. They're ready to kill each other. It's like 6 hours of meeting wasted and no decision at the end. I think so. By the practices, by the golden rules of the Lean UX, we should try to avoid that. Instead, we take an assumption, we build it in a prototype, quick and dirty, fast, and we go test it. We see it doesn't work, throw away, next one. In this way, we save our nervous system, we save the time of everybody, of that people, six people in the room. Yeah, and we're just actually like trying and getting somewhere, and more we're learning on the way, so we're getting some knowledge out of there. Removing waste, this is a super important one. I mentioned this before already, and as I said, I don't really see a need why we would go directly and start development if we can like fake it within such a big variety of the tools that allow us to just build a prototype and go around and make a couple of tests. And this is, by the way, a point where design sprint helps a lot. If the feature is super complex and you really need like half of your company, well, let's say like 10 people, just gather the team, run the design sprint, and you will have your working prototype at the end of 5 or 3 days, whoever does it, and then you just test it, and there is no waste. You didn't waste the development hours. They can be be busy with, let's say, performance, which is always better. And the one of the super important parts is that shared understanding that sometimes I see, so all of the decisions are being done maybe somewhere on the management level, right? And sometimes the UX somehow gets like this little piece of that information that can enter the room and stay there. I never see development there though. And I think this is one of the problems that I think that could really help us build this killer features more, is that if everybody would be sharing the knowledge that, okay, somebody was at this super high meeting or at the user testing, right? We so much rarely share the outcomes with well, first of all, with you guys, with the developers, because you are actually the one who's going to be implementing that for the real life. And I feel like if we would do that more often, and also like we as designers, because we are the one collecting the feedback, if we would share that outcomes better and more, I think that would like help you to build the correct thing. And yeah, again, this kind of a house that I showed in the beginning will never have an ugly roof. So yeah, that's one of the secrets that I think worth to take into account. And couple of actual practice tips or practical tips from Zebra Labs, from my experience, that I see like really helping to remove this really popular challenges when we are talking about the designers and developers collaborations. So the first challenge that we are like that I'm hearing quite often from the designers, like we are not we have no idea what developers are doing. We only see the outcome on the demo somewhere, like we don't know, like we have no idea what's happening, and we are not involved into their day-to-day life. So actually the solution that worked for us pretty nice is just putting a UX team member into each of the feature teams or Scrum teams stand-ups. I know that most of the designers kind of like hate that, like why they took so much technical things, and usually they're so long, they're never 15 minutes like they should be. But there is actually a lot of useful things happening there. So you know what they're busy with, you know what their blockers are. You know directly when there is a design, when there is a blocker from a design side, right? So you can just directly jump in and solve it for them, and they can go on and can just remove that thing. If that goes longer than 15 minutes, I think it's purely up to you to say, hey guys, like, is this really a stand-up discussion? Like, can we move this to the, I have like another question. And if you feel friendly, this sometimes works, sometimes not really, but I try. And yeah, like no exceptions. You cannot say, okay, I'm so much don't feel like going tomorrow because like we're gonna discuss all these technical things again. No, you have to be there. I mean, just 15 minutes of your time is, I'm sure, like that's useful. Seriously, that's useful. Another thing that I'm hearing quite often, and actually I was saying earlier myself as well, we do not discuss problem. We do not like learn together with the development. We as a designer, so we do not discuss like what went wrong, what went good. You know, where can we make things better, and what's the best place for that. Right? That's our retrospective, the development team retrospective, or that's the UX team retrospective, whatever you have there. So by mixing the, let's say, or involving one of the Scrum Master from the dev into your UX retrospective, or sending somebody from UX team to the dev retrospective, you can be a representative of a UX team there, and you can hear all the complaints that they, well, maybe they will complain a little bit, they complain a little bit less about the design just because the fact you're there, they will be a little bit decent. But if there is a problem that was caused by the design team, by the UX team, you will hear it. Yeah, I think this works pretty well as well, because then you can also share, hey, like we would expect that you would reach out to us earlier with a demo, let's say, of the feature, like, or you can discuss all of these important things that are so good to know when you are actually working together, or trying to work together. And again, no exceptions. You cannot say, hey, retrospective is 2 hours. It's useful. There is useful stuff. You get at the end, you get like more maybe like closer like friendship. You build relationship as well. So it's not like just torture. You should not take it like that. Couple of more things. I think just two. Often we hear and we complain as a designers, and yeah, I do that as well myself. But we are saying like, hey, like there's so many design decisions done without our involvement, without like our influence, etc. It's pretty hard to like take that away, but a couple of things that we've done. So the first thing what we've done is actually on each of the Scrum team boards, we put a needs UX or clarify with UX or clarification with UX needed, whatever you want to call it. We have a separate column there. So whenever we are at that stand-ups, whenever we are all with the team standing and looking on the Scrum board, we see, okay, if there is a UX column and there is something in there, I clearly know, hey, there is an action waiting on me. So I'm not delaying the whole development team. And yeah, I can quickly act on that and just unblock them so they run and they finish their work. And another thing that we've done at GK Labs, we try to build a pretty well, stronger, let's say, than maybe with the rest developers, but like your Scrum Master is your partner in crime. So you have to know who is the Scrum Master for which development team. Because, for example, I see that sometimes you have so many development teams and you don't even know that. But that's kind of important because we teach them, or at least we try to ask them, that the Scrum Master is responsible for raising a problem to us if there is a development and if there is a designer problem that holds up the team. Or if he sees some problem that, okay, developers are not really happy with how the designers like send their specification. This is your responsibility because you as a Scrum Master, you know that. So you have to come to us secretly, privately maybe, but talk, hey, like we need to work this out. So like build this friendship between the Scrum Master and maybe the spot designer, the single point of contact designer on your team. To make sure that those roadblocks are also removed. Yeah, because yeah, then it's just easy to collaborate. One of the final things is yeah, like in my story in the beginning, we often see that the actual development is different from the designs, the initial state of the designs, and sometimes this is fine, right? Because well, sometimes we just go in the phases, in the versions, whatever. But there is something that we can do from our side as a designers in order to avoid this from happening. Is that I often see that the specification is just being sent over Jira or over email or HipChat, I don't know, but there is no actual like human conversation. And I think this is very important, not just sit together for like half an hour and just like walk through the user flow, like explain, hey, this is what we were thinking, this is why we built that. This is at two classes. First, you share the understanding, so you explain why you made certain design decisions. So your developers are on the same page with you. But also, it actually helps us because in my experience, developers have always good questions. Like they would ask you this little thing that you would never ever think without them. And this is something that would bite you in the ass later for sure. So it's better to talk to your development team and discuss, just get their feedback, get their input before this will end up at the customer table or something like that. Two rules that we also have set up is UX defined definition of done. There is a lot of talks how to actually set up that and set that up, but yeah, there is no sign off of the development work. Like it has to it has to reflect whatever the requirements are saying. And if you are the UX and you come and you see that this actually doesn't work like that, okay, CVLabs doesn't yet work this way, but you basically should send it back and say, hey, like this story is not ready, just send it back to me. This is more for and your quality assurance team should be your partner there because, well, with our quality assurance team, we start even like this nice, there are some tools that can help you combine the mock-up and the actual screen and see what are the differences. So it's pretty cool, some nice software that can help you there as well. So they should actually like try to help you as well to catch those differences because at the end this is going to be more expensive to guys than later and this is how fast it will work. And final thing, there's so many tools out there that can just like help you bridge this gap between the design and development, right? And, starting from the design system, we use Atomic Design at CVLabs. We started doing this for now internally for the designers. We are planning to extract this to grow this also to the development side. I think this is when this is properly set. This is like awesome thing because you really pretty much removing all of the inconsistencies like by default. If of course everybody is committed. Yeah, and it's just easier to work this way for designers and for developers. We use Sketch, but I'm sure many people are doing that. It's opener. Zapier is pretty helpful for us because this is actually one of the ways how we share the requirements because Zapier has this super feature that some other software as well has. To show the specification, like the colors, the amount of pixels, and sometimes, which actually, by the way, I love, the developer will come to me and say, hey, this is inconsistent. Like there is this much pixels here and there is twice much here. Why? Awesome feedback, revert it back to the designers. If it's shitty work, bring it back, right? It works for everybody. There is no exception there. Framer, we actually just starting to use that one. We use it for the interactive prototypes. You can do pretty cool things with that. It requires a little bit of JavaScript understanding, but if you get your hands on it, it's pretty useful with building that the demos that can remove, that can help you removing the waste, right? That can help you with building this almost real prototype. Sometimes our customers like coming to us, so when is this going to be live? When we after the user test, we are saying like, this is not even yet real, and they're like, but this is real, like you see it. Yeah, sorry, this is not a new product, this is just a product. And we actually use also abstract for them, design files versioning. This is something pretty handy when you're working in a big team. Somebody can delete something, somebody can do some crap, and it's really easily to revertible. You can put some comments in there. Yeah, so all of these tools are our helpers. I'm sure there is a lot of similar tools out there that can help you in your teams, but just this is a big help, seriously. Without those tools, I think, yeah, we are like similar to different islands.
What's Atomic Design? Because you know it just.
Atomic Design is just this is more like well, this is not the tool itself, but this is a methodology. We'll see how you can set up the design system. Check out the website. There is a lot of information on there. And like, for example, we use Sketch to build in design system there. But yeah, you can build it in any software. Well, yeah, you can just build it in code. Probably it's even
Yeah, I
better.
use Sketch, but I don't really have a lot of designs.
Yeah, it's just it's the way you break up your components for the design. So like,
I'll show you how that works in a bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks. Great. Okay, so with this, I would like to sum up a little bit and a couple of the outcomes. My main messages to the crowd today is, yeah, as we started from, I think that communication is the key, the collaboration is the key for us to build those killer products and to make sure that we don't put each other under the bus when the software is released, when it reaches the customer. Everybody is responsible at the end of the day. Everything also starts from the from the proper location of the UX team, because if your UX team is sitting somewhere far away and you are not really using it, or at least you are misusing it, or I don't know, they're just bored and they're playing games, this is also not nice, it's not really helpful, right? Use them to be those icebreakers for your features, use them to test things before you're gonna like spend days and days in the development, and then somebody will come to you and you say, hey, you said it crap. Yeah, a UX is icebreaker. That's I'll just repeat myself. And don't forget about Lean UX. It's getting more and more popular right now. I see more people talk about that. But those practices, like those simple things that they describe there, that make a lot of sense, especially when you try them. There is a lot of literature about the Lean UX. So I encourage everybody to go and check that out. But I'm sure many people will probably know that. And the last one. So UX team is involved in the dev rituals and the other way around. Because without that, it's so much going on every day at the office, I feel. That how much you would want to be connected if you would say, hey, we can pitch up later. This pitch up later probably will never happen, or if it will happen, it will not be that productive. Just try to be there when these discussions are happening. Try to involve somebody from there, somebody from UX, so then you can spread the knowledge around. So this shared knowledge is really important. And I think when we are following the rituals of each other, it really helps us to be friends and to be on the same page. And of course, like the respect, I think that's the most important part. We hear so much bad things about each other, but I think, death hurts is death, right? So let's respect each other. Let's be friends. I think that's going to help us.
So, are there any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks for sharing that. I have a question regarding did you and your team have any pushbacks from the dev teams, and especially the design teams, on wanting to get involved? In my company, for example, some designers, they don't want to do stand-ups. They think it's really boring, or even sharing with designers. So during this process, did you have suffer any pushbacks, and how did you guys handle it with management and designers?
So the question is, I will just repeat for the microphone. If at my company we received any pushbacks from the designers to participate in the development rituals, actually no. From the designers, we never did that. But maybe before you're gonna try to involve your designers into the development rituals, you need to fix the development rituals first. Because honestly, what I see happening a lot that the stand-ups are being transformed into the meetings and into the discussion of the two people and everybody else just standing and browsing the phone. I think seriously, phones should not be allowed in the stand-up room. It's just 15 minutes, you can survive. And I feel like if you feel that the conversation is deviating somewhere, there should be a scrum master that's usually not really playing his role. But if the scrum master is quiet, just be the scrum master. Just say, hey guys, just stop. This is not a stand-up discussion. So yeah, if I think before involving designers, you probably need to make sure that the rituals are correct, and then probably that can help because yeah, we did that first, and not. I think it's what's good for us.
It's maybe also a sanity check for developers at the moment that designers start to tune out, that probably went into much technical to take it offline and do it after the stand-up.
Yeah, we also like to invite Elmo. You all know the red guy from Sesame Street. It stands for enough. Let's move on. Right, Elmo.
Doesn't work, yeah. I've seen some people using the Winky toy, so they start to do these annoying noises when the conversation goes somewhere. That's a fun way to do it. And if they continue, you quick, so like don't allow them to talk. That's it. Next one.
Is there another question?
Let's say you have like 8 development teams where you have 2 or 3 designers. So you divide them up, whatever model you use. How would you go about designers getting overwhelmed with a ton of rituals because they're in multiple teams?
Good question. So the question is, if you have, let's say, 8 development teams and 3 designers, if the designers are getting overwhelmed with the rituals.
Yeah.
Well, I think we had that also sometime because we have like 40 developers and we started from, well, 1, then 2, then 3, then 4 designers. At some point it was also overwhelming. So what we found that we would just like, you attend stand-ups, let's say, you skip 1. So if you really have not that enough resources, you can just attend like one stand-up once in 2 or 3 days. But then you're still kind of like trying to make sure that your Scrum Master and your team know that, hey, if there is something coming, you really need to talk to me, you know, here am I, etc. And then, yeah, you can attend, for example, sometimes I see that if talking about the retrospective, the developers can do like the general retrospective, but you could just join the general one, let's say, so not join every one of them, or just like to skip from time to time, but let developers know that, hey, I'm skipping today, but I'm for sure gonna be there back tomorrow, because otherwise, things get like relaxed and kind of like all the hard work that you've done is being forgotten. So yeah, and my actually advice then just get more designers. That
That's not in the designer's hands.
I know.
Is there anyone else? I have one question. Is it feels like maybe it becomes a unidirectional flow of it's designed first, and then the moment that it comes to the developers, it's basically execute. So I'm a developer. I hope to sometimes be involved more in the beginning. But you do that, but do you think there should be a dev spec as well, or?
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. So the question is that it seems like the design goes first, and then the development is kind of like just executing things, and it should be there at development spot, right? To be honest, I never had that problem of a need of having a dev spot because at least in the organization when I work, maybe because I'm the one always, I would like chase people if I need to, so I will always find whoever I need. But maybe like if your design team, let's say, feels a little bit not that, self-confident, then maybe like if you really need to reverse these ideas, why not? I actually never thought about that, but that would be a really good idea. Why not? And about to your comment about that developers kind of like only execute things, I think that's also not true because, as I said, that it's important to start involving like everybody, like whoever going to do the work from the beginning. It just depends on how much time people have. But I prefer always to have a representative of a dev, of a product, let's say.